Welcome back, welcome back. David Cameron, the new British Prime Minister, wants to see a big society in the UK, giving power to communities, individuals and volunteers. And the person who helped develop it in opposition is the UK's first Muslim cabinet minister now, Sayeeda Warsi. She's also the new Conservative Party chairman. She's with me now for what is, in fact, we were just saying, your first interview since getting the job.
First formal interview, sit down like this, yes. Yeah. And I'm delighted that it's you, David, that's doing it.
Well, I'm delighted it's you that's doing it too. So that the feeling is mutual. And actually, the feeling around the world, the reaction to your appointment has been tremendous, hasn't it? All over.
It has. I mean, it's been really humbling. I've had emails from around the world, and I've had newspaper cuttings from around the world, from India, from Pakistan, Bangladesh, Indonesia, Dubai, Turkey, Canada, and indeed in Pakistan, which is where my parents originate from. The news of my appointment was running as breaking news for about 48 hours.
And what was the message they took from it?
I think the big message was that Britain, I think one of the headlines that I saw was Britain is open for more than business. And I think that's the message that went out, that here was a British Muslim of Pakistani origin taking her seat in the cabinet, historically the first time ever we've had an Asian sitting in cabinet, and also chairing the Conservative Party, which...
That's huge too.
That is huge, because 10 years ago, if you were to speak to many members of the Pakistani origin, Indian origin, Arab origin communities in Britain, Muslim communities in Britain, they would probably say that the Conservative Party is not their home and probably never will be. It's not a place where they felt at ease. And here we are in 2010, where the party chairman happens to be a working class girl from Yorkshire of Pakistani origin and of Muslim faith.
Well, exactly, because I mean, in general, people would they talk about it, would vaguely have expected that that you would, as a Muslim and so on, you would have probably back years ago, probably have chosen Labour or whatever. What made you choose the Conservative?
I think for me there were two big things why I was a Conservative. Firstly, because I think I always saw the Conservative Party as a party of aspiration. I always grew up with my dad voting for the Labour Party and my mum voting for Margaret Thatcher, and I always felt that the Conservative Party was the home for what I call the migrant work ethic, those people who came here, worked hard and wanted to improve their lot. And do it through hard work and opportunity. And secondly, because I fundamentally believe that government should be small, state should be small, and society should be big. Very much the thinking around the big society social responsibility agenda, which David Cameron and I developed in opposition.
And is this, as the phrase has been used often in Conservative documents and everything, I mean, do you think too that this is quite apart, maybe becoming a big society, but is it a broken society at the moment?
I think there are parts of Britain which are broken. You know, whether you look at welfare dependency over many, many generations, addiction to alcohol and drugs, family breakdown, the way in which people are always, there is a part of our society which feels everything should be done for them, rather than what am I doing for anybody else. And I think it was a phrase that David used, the Prime Minister used during the election campaign, which is ask not what the country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. And I think that sense of responsibility has to be given back to parents, to teachers, to frontline professionals, to ordinary citizens, to say you've got to play your part. And I think in today's economic conditions, where Britain is at a very difficult time in terms of the deficit and the debt, I think there is a responsibility on each and every one of us to say, how are we going to play our part in making our communities better?
And what about immigration? What would you like to see done about immigration in the Queen's Speech or beyond it?
Well, I think that it's where we have 5 million people on out-of-work benefits. I think it's very right for the government to say that we must have a limit on the number of people coming into this country for unskilled work. And I say that quite loudly and proudly as the daughter of an immigrant mill worker. You know, my father came here 50 years ago.
And the limit should be what, do you think?
I think we have to set the limit in according to what the needs are at any one time. I think we have to talk to business, we have to talk to the NHS, we have to talk to the big employers, we have to look at the state of our own economy, we have to look at which parts of Britain can accommodate and how we can resource the new intake and how we can integrate those people into British society. And I think that figure will be set each year. I think the Prime Minister has indicated that that figure will be set early next year.
Set early next year. What was it last year?
I couldn't give you the specific figure in last year. I mean, I'm sure my colleague Damien Green could give you that figure, because he's now the immigration minister. But what I do know is that over the last Labour government's tenure, it has been in the hundreds of thousands, and we think it should be in the tens of thousands.
Well, that's a clear figure there. What do you feel reading about these stories about the fact that the French cabinet have approved a draft law to ban the Muslim full-face veil, and that it's passed the cabinet and now it's on the way to be made law and so on? Do you think that's a good move?
France is a very different place to Britain. France is a very secular nation, always has been, and has an aversion to most things religious, I think, in the public domain. Britain has never been like that. We've always been a plural place, and whether it's been in terms of diversity within Christianity or new faiths coming into Britain, we've always been a much more welcoming and tolerant nation. And I think, like David Cameron, the Prime Minister, has said, and like I have said very, very clearly, that the issue of the face veil or the hijab or the niqab is not an issue to do with Islam, or whether or not the face veil is part of Islam or isn't part of Islam. For me, it's an issue about what women should be allowed to wear. And I think it is just as bad for a leader to be forcing women to wear the veil as it is for a political leader to force women not to wear the veil. And I said, probably quite politically incorrectly, when Jack Straw raised the issue, that it's not the remit of middle-aged white men to tell women what to wear. There was a point when they used to comment on the length of our skirts, and now they're commenting on the length of our veils. You know, really, they should butt out of women's wardrobes and allow it to be a matter of choice. What women wear in their private lives, in their own lives, is absolutely a matter for them, and it would be, I think, a very unhappy society that would try to regulate women's wardrobes.
What about last weekend, the 2020 World Cup semi-finals and so on? How did you sort out, in the best Norman Tebbit tradition, who you cheered for in England versus Pakistan?
Well, I cheered I was very angry at the Pakistani team on their performance in the semi-finals, but I was delighted to see England win, and I think they put up a great performance. And I think it's, you know, at a time when things are difficult in Britain, news like that is always great news. But I always said to Norman Tebbit, to Lord Tebbit, who's a colleague on the backbenchers, that I probably would fail his cricket test, because at any one time I would go for the most exciting team. And, you know, England played a very exciting game in the current 2020, but in the past I've always felt that other teams have been more exciting.
Yeah. Just slightly so. So what's your ambition, Sayeeda, of the first thing you would like to achieve in government?
I think for me, the biggest issue, and I think for any of us, is actually to get the deficit under control. That has to be a big issue. Everything flows from that. We can't carry on in the way that we have done. We can't carry on spending in the way that we have done. We have to seriously bring the public finances under control. But we have to do it in a way where we protect and support those who are most vulnerable, those who are frail, the elderly, and make sure that we do it in a way where we don't hit, firstly, those frontline services.
Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
Hurry back again as we see your lightning progress along the way. A joy to have you with us.
Thank you.
Thanks. I'm joined now by a man who has been called Britain's best-loved philosopher. Alain De Botton is a best-selling author whose most recent work, The Pleasures and Sorrows of Work, explores the joys and perils of the modern workplace. Last year he was Heathrow Airport's first ever writer-in-residence. And amidst all of this, he somehow found the time for a new project called Living Architecture, which he hopes can cure British people of their phobia of modern architecture. So let's take a look at that right now. Living architecture there, and how did you go about that? How many people were involved?
Well, really the idea came because I wrote a book about architecture, essentially arguing for better quality architecture in the UK. Because I think in the UK there's still a feeling that good equals old and bad equals new, that any new building is somehow inferior. And this frustrated me, and so I wrote a book, and then one realises sometimes that books can't do everything, and I thought, well, perhaps I need to roll up my sleeves. And so I got together with a group of people from the world of art, the world of property, etc. And we put together this project called Living Architecture, which is setting out to build a number of architect-designed houses around the UK that are available to rent for people on holiday, so that people can actually have a chance to see what it's like to live and sleep and eat in a house designed by some of the world's great architects. So it's a very democratic project.
And modern people today, do you think they're loath to try it out, or that they respond against it when they try it out?
I think when they try it out, they love it. Right. That's been my experience. But they're very frightened of it. And actually, in the UK, if you're looking for somewhere to stay, on the whole, most buildings are old. You know, in London, central London, the hotels tend to be old. If you go out into the countryside, most of tourism is based on a historic vision of Britain. And yet Britain does have a wealth of architectural talent. But as I say, most people only experience that maybe in an airport, in a train station, in an office, but not in a domestic environment. And yet domestic environments can be some of the most touching and effective.
And if this is successful, it could spread around the world?
Maybe. I think it's probably most needed in the UK. It'd be lovely if people wanted to take it abroad, and we're very open to offers to do that. I think that the idea of staying in a work of art/architecture and at the same time having a good holiday seems a wonderful way of combining sort of aesthetics with just pure enjoyment.
And how does one come to be a writer in residence at Heathrow Airport?
Well, it was very bizarre. Last summer I was contacted by the owners of Heathrow Airport who said, will you come and write a book? You know, we like your stuff. Would you come and write a book about the airport? And that was immediately slightly worrying, because I thought, is this a piece of propaganda or something? And they said, no, we won't touch it, we won't read it. We just want you to write it, and then you can go off and publish it. And I've always loved airports. Airports for me are places where so much of the modern world comes together. And this was a chance to sit in an airport and find out how it worked, talk to everybody from the pilots to the cleaners to the people who make the meals, to the people in the control tower. And I wrote a little book called A Week at the Airport, which recently came out. And it was just a wonderful experience, being a writer in residence at a place like Heathrow.
Did you enjoy being a writer at Heathrow Airport? I mean, was it really interesting?
I loved it. I mean, I think the world divides into those who hate airports and those who have a sneaking love of them, despite all the inconveniences. And I definitely think that they're exciting places, and I loved being given access, because most of the time when we're in an airport, because of security concerns, you just get 3 minutes and you're pushed through, and you don't get to ask, where's that person going? Why are they saying this, etc. And this was a wonderful place to, I slept at the airport. They gave me a bed at nearby Sofitel, and it was great fun to spend, days and nights talking to everybody, feeling part of the community, because it is a community, an airport, and getting everywhere, inside the aeroplanes, under the aeroplanes, as I say, where they make the meals, all of that.
And so did you have to take off your shoes and clothes 10 times a day when you wanted to move from one section to another?
Absolutely. When you go airside, as they call it, the security procedures for people who are not flying are about 3 times as strict as those regular passengers. So it takes about an hour to cross. And I kept saying, it's me, I just came a minute ago. And they say, no, regulations. So it gives you sympathy. And also talking to the security people gives you sympathy for all the minor threats that go on every day. And even talking to people in the control tower, it's amazing how many errors there are in an airport. Most of the time as a passenger, you don't notice them. You only notice them when there's a catastrophe. But the airport is a little bit like the road network. Every day, every minute, someone's braking a little bit hard to avoid a collision, etc. And the same is true of a busy airport.
And so people at British Airways special services, they take their shoes off and off about 25 times a day.
Something like that.
Good test also. They should do a survey about shoes while they're at it.
They were very good. I got to interview the head of British Airways, Willie Walsh, and at that time his life seemed pretty dicey and risky. Now it looks even more dicey and risky, but he was very open as an ex-pilot. We spoke about the beauty of aeroplanes, and I got him to conclude rather naughtily, that airlines are really best viewed not as businesses, because as businesses they're terrible. Really they should be viewed as aesthetic, technological phenomena. They're fantastic.
Charities,
look at it,
perhaps.
Almost. So I got him to admit that, and then he got into trouble. But no, he was an interesting man.
Yeah. Well, it's great to have you with us. Good luck with all of the projects. We'll see you again soon.
Thank you.
Scottish acting star John Hannah, he'll be with us after this short break.